did not yell. I did not send a long text full of accusations. I did not show up at their door demanding an explanation. I just sat in my truck in the driveway for a few minutes, looking at the front yard I had mowed the previous weekend, and then I backed out and drove home. That was the Saturday before Thanksgiving. My son had just told me, standing in his own kitchen while his wife was upstairs, that they had decided to do the holiday, just the immediate family this year. He said it casually, like he was telling me the weather forecast, like I was some distant acquaintance he needed to politely decline. I am his father. I have been his father for 31 years. I coached his little league team in the summer heat. I sat in every school play, every graduation, every moment that mattered. After his mother passed 8 years ago, I made sure he never felt like he had lost both parents at once. I showed up. Every single time I showed up. But I was not immediate family, apparently. I said, okay. That was all. Just okay. And I walked out to my truck. I want to be honest about those first few minutes driving home, because this story is not just about what I did next. It is about what it felt like to be standing in a kitchen that I helped pay for, in a house that exists because of a financial arrangement I agreed to 3 years ago, and hearing that I was not welcome at the table for Thanksgiving. My son, whose name is Joel, is 31. His wife, whose name is Pam, is 29. They have one daughter, my granddaughter, who just turned 4. They bought this house in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio in the spring of 2022. It is a nice house. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, a 2-car garage. The kind of house I could not have dreamed of at 31. The kind of house that, at 31, they could not actually afford on their own either. Here is how it worked. Their combined income at the time was decent, but not sufficient for the mortgage on that house, not with the interest rates the way they were. My son came to me and laid out the numbers. He was always good with numbers. He explained that if I co-signed the loan, they could qualify. He also explained with great confidence that they would handle the payments completely on their own. He was clear about that. He just needed my name and credit history on the paperwork. I said yes because he is my son, and I wanted him to have what I had built for myself. A home, stability, something to pass down. I said yes because after his mother died, I felt like I needed to keep being useful to him somehow. I said yes because I trusted him. And then, 3 months after they moved in, Joel called me and said they were short that month. His wife's car had needed an expensive repair, and they had burned through their savings. He asked if I could cover the mortgage just this once. I covered it. I told myself once. And then once became occasionally, and occasionally, over the course of 2.5 years, became every single month. Somewhere in that time, without any formal conversation, without any written agreement, without any acknowledgement on their part, I had become the person who paid their mortgage. $1,140, first of every month, transferred directly to the loan servicer. I also paid their home insurance. Joel had mentioned early on that the premium had jumped and they were struggling to absorb it into their budget. I offered to cover it temporarily. That was 2 years ago. I paid for a new furnace last January when the old one failed during a cold snap, $8,000. I did not ask to be paid back. I did not want them cold. None of this was secret. None of this was something I hid or resented, at least not at first. I did it because I loved my son and because I loved that little girl and because I genuinely believed we were a family who helped each other through hard seasons. What I did not understand until that Saturday in November was that help had quietly become expectation and my presence had become optional. I drove home and made myself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table in the house where Joel grew up. The house is paid off. I own it. I have owned it outright for 11 years. I looked around at the walls where his school pictures used to hang, and I thought about my wife and what she would have said about all of this. And then I stopped thinking about that because it made me too sad. I called my brother instead. His name is George. He is 64, 2 years older than me, and he has always been direct with me in a way that most people are not. I told him what happened. He was quiet for a moment and then he said, "What are you going to do about it?" I told him I did not know yet. He said, "You do know, you just haven't decided if you're willing to do it." George was right. I did know. I slept on it for 2 nights. I did not call Joel. I did not reach out to Pam. I did not want to have a conversation while I was still in the place where I would either say something I would regret or back down from something I needed to do. I have made both of those mistakes before in my life, and I was 62 years old and too tired for either one. On Monday morning, I logged into my bank account. I looked at the scheduled transfer. $1,140, set to go out on the 1st of December, 12 days away. I looked at it for a long time. Then I cancelled it. It was not dramatic. It was 3 clicks on a screen, but I sat back in my chair and felt something shift in my chest. Not relief exactly, not satisfaction. Something quieter than both of those. Something that felt like, for the first time in a long time, I had done something that was true to what I actually believed about myself. I also made a note to call my insurance agent in the morning about removing my copay on their home insurance policy. If they were immediate family only now, they could handle immediate family expenses. I did not call Joe. I did not send a message. I did not explain myself or warn him or give him a chance to walk anything back. He had not given me that courtesy. He had stood in his kitchen on a Saturday and told me I was not welcome for Thanksgiving and said it like it required no further discussion. So I decided it required no further discussion from me either. The first was a Thursday that month. By Friday afternoon, my phone rang. I recognized the number and let it go to voicemail. He called back 10 minutes later. I let that one go too. Then Pam called. I let that go. Then Joel called 4 more times in the span of an hour. I turned my phone face down and finished the book I was reading. By Saturday morning, I had 14 missed calls. By Saturday evening, I had 22. By Sunday, I had received a text message from Joel that said simply, "Dad, the payment didn't go through. Is everything okay with your account?" I read it twice. There was something almost funny about the phrasing. Is everything okay with your account? Not, Dad, I'm sorry about what I said. Not, can we talk about Thanksgiving? Just a polite, careful inquiry about whether my bank account was functioning properly. I did not respond. On Monday, I received a longer text. He said the servicer had sent them a notice. He said he was worried about a late fee. He said he had tried to cover it from their account, but they were tight this month, and was I available to talk? I was available. I chose not to be. On Tuesday, my phone rang at 7:45 in the morning. Joe, again. I picked it up this time. He said, "Dad, what is going on? The payment hasn't gone through, and now there's a late fee, and Pam is really stressed." I said, "I know." He said, "What do you mean you know?" I said, "I cancelled the transfer." There was a silence on the line that lasted long enough that I checked to make sure the call was still connected. He finally said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Because you uninvited me from Thanksgiving." Another silence. Then, "Dad, that is not fair. That was Pam's decision, and we just thought." I said, "It doesn't matter whose decision it was. You are my son. I have been paying your mortgage for 2.5 years. I paid for your furnace. I pay for your home insurance. And you told me I was not welcome for the holiday, so I decided to stop paying for the home you won't welcome me into." He said, "That's not what this is about. You're being," I said, "I'm not being anything, Joel. I'm making a decision about my own money, just like you made a decision about your guest list." He started to say something about the late fee, and I said, "That's between you and the servicer." He said, "Dad, this is serious. If we miss too many payments," I said, "I know what happens. I co-signed the loan. My name is on that paperwork too. I have not forgotten that." And then I said something I had been thinking about for a week. I said, "What I want you to understand is that this is not about Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is just when I finally understood what I was to you. I was useful. And that is not enough for me anymore." He was quiet. I said, "When you're ready to talk about what this family actually looks like going forward, call me. I'll pick up." And then I ended the call. I will not pretend that felt good in any simple way. I drove around for a while after that. I ended up at the cemetery where my wife is buried, which is something I do when I need to think. and I sat in the car and talked to her for a little while, the way I still do sometimes. I told her what I had done. I told her I hoped I had done the right thing. I told her I missed her. I went home and made dinner and watched the news and went to bed. Over the next week and a half, Joel called 7 more times. I let most of them go to voicemail. His messages moved through several stages. The first few were still about the money, framed with increasing urgency. Then one was quieter, shorter. He said, "Dad, I think I handled things badly. I'd like to talk." I saved that one. I called him back 2 days later. We talked for almost 2 hours. It was not easy, and it was not a clean resolution. He admitted that he had let Pam make a lot of decisions about family events without pushing back, and that he had not thought seriously about what those decisions meant to me. He said he knew I had been carrying a lot of the financial weight, and that he had told himself it was temporary, but had stopped actively working to change it. He said he was sorry. I told him I appreciated that. I also told him I needed something more than sorry. I told him I needed us to sit down, the 3 of us, and have an honest conversation about what this arrangement was going to look like going forward. Not because I wanted to be paid back, but because I was not going to continue carrying costs for a household that treated me like an outsider. If I was going to be part of this family financially, I needed to be part of this family. He agreed. Pam was harder. She did not come to that first conversation willingly. She said she felt ambushed, and Joel had to do a lot of work to get her to understand that I was not attacking her, but that I was her daughter's grandfather, and that was not going to change. That conversation happened at my kitchen table the Sunday before Thanksgiving, which is not how I had imagined spending that weekend, but there it was. It was not warm. It was not a movie. She did not apologize with tears in her eyes. She said she understood that her decision had caused harm. That was about all she offered, and I accepted it because it was honest. What I told both of them was this: I am not a resource. I am a person. I am the father of this family and the grandfather of that little girl, and I will not be made invisible as long as I am funding the life you are living. Either I'm in this family or I am not. Both are choices I can live with. But I will not live in the middle anymore. I did resume the mortgage payment the following month. I want to be honest about that. I am not a man who punishes his son indefinitely, and I do not want my granddaughter to lose her home over a family dispute. But I resumed it under different terms. Joel and I drafted a simple repayment arrangement. Nothing hostile, just a written acknowledgement of what I had contributed over the years and a plan for them to take over the full payment within 18 months. That document exists, and we both signed it. Thanksgiving was different this year. I was there. So was George and his wife. Pam cooked a turkey that was honestly not great, and we all ate it, and my granddaughter made me sit with her at the little kids' table, even though I was the only one at it, and I did not mind at all. There is something I want to say to anyone who might be listening to this, and recognizing something familiar in it. I spent a long time telling myself that being needed was the same as being loved. I told myself that providing was the same as belonging. I was wrong about both of those things, and I wish it had not taken being uninvited to my son's house to understand that. You do not earn your place in a family by paying for it. You already have a place. The question is whether the people around you see it, and if they do not, the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to stop quietly funding the story where you are invisible. I am 62 years old. I have more years behind me than ahead of me, probably. I have no interest in spending those years being useful and being forgotten in the same breath. My name is not on a check. It is on a mortgage document, yes. But it is also in that little girl's heart when she reaches up for me and calls me Pop. That is the only account balance I actually care about getting right. I did not beg. I did not scream. I just stopped. And that was enough. I have been thinking a lot lately about the difference between being needed and being valued. For most of my adult life, I confused the two. I thought they were the same thing. I thought that if I was useful enough, present enough, generous enough, the love would follow automatically, that the value would be understood without ever having to be stated. What happened with Joel taught me that is not how it works. Not always. Not even usually. When a person gives without limit and without condition, what they're really doing is teaching the people around them that limits do not exist. that conditions do not apply. I did not intend to teach my son that lesson. I intended to love him. But somewhere between the first mortgage payment and the furnace and the insurance premiums, I had quietly removed every natural boundary that would have forced him to reckon with what he was taking for granted. I made it easy for him to not think about me. That is on me as much as it is on him. The cause was invisible generosity. The effect was invisible father. That is how these things work. Not through cruelty, not through malice, but through accumulated small choices that nobody names until something breaks. Joel did not wake up one day and decide to treat me like a utility bill. It happened slowly, the way a room gets dusty when you stop paying attention to it. Pam made decisions, Joel went along, and I kept writing checks. Nobody ever sat down and said out loud what the arrangement actually was. So nobody ever had to feel bad about it, until the Saturday he stood in his kitchen and told me Thanksgiving was immediate family only. That was the moment the arrangement became impossible to ignore. What I did next was not revenge. I want to be clear about that. Cancelling that transfer was not about punishing Joel or making Pam panic or proving a point. It was about finally telling the truth about what I was willing to do and what I was not. It was the first honest financial conversation we had ever had, and I had it by saying nothing at all. There is a kind of courage that does not look like courage from the outside. It does not raise its voice. It does not make speeches. It just stops. It draws a line in the quiet of a Monday morning, clicks 3 buttons on a bank website, and then sits with the discomfort of having done something real. That is the hardest kind of courage I know, because there is nothing dramatic to hide behind. Just a decision and its consequences. Joel is a good man. I believe that. He was raised by a good woman, and he has good instincts when he actually slows down long enough to use them. What he lacked was not character. What he lacked was the experience of being held accountable by someone who loved him. I had protected him from that for too long, because I thought protection was love. Real love, I understand now, sometimes looks like letting someone feel the weight of a decision they made. I am 62. I have earned the right to take up space in my own family. So have you, if you are sitting somewhere listening to this and recognizing yourself in any part of it. You do not have to be dramatic about it. You do not have to give speeches or issue ultimatums or burn anything down. You just have to stop pretending that being useful is enough. It is not enough. You are enough. The rest is just paperwork.